Shit! Shit! This is amazing. Absolutely amazing. 3 days ago.
Wait! I fucked up. I accidentally turned the camera off. Start again.
Start again?
Well?
All right. 3 days ago, the Phi visited me. I heard their knock and answered my door. I expected Phi A, B, and C to be there, but this time it was only Phi B. I was somewhat stunned by this departure from their established protocol. I let Phi B in and immediately walked over to my couch to sit down. And as I sat down in my chair opposite it, I received another surprise. A command. No questions yet. No questions. Okay, I could agree to that. And then another command. Look at my eyes. God damn! I was bowled over. I mean, normally I'm a bit resentful when anyone starts commanding me to do anything, but so far the Phi had never steered me wrong, and besides, when the Phi gave a command, it was practically impossible to resist. I stared into the Phi's dark, huge eyes. I stared and stared into those eyes, and then suddenly everything was switched. I was within those eyes, looking out. I mean, it was more than just looking through a Phi's eyes. I was a Phi. I had somehow made a full-body telepathic connection, only it wasn't Phi B's eyes I looked out of. It was another Phi, in another place. The Phi, whose senses I shared, stood on a balcony around 5 stories high, looking out over a city composed of low, pale blue buildings that reminded me of something that might have come out of a Jell-O mold. There were no sharp angles to be seen. All the buildings seemed to be planned in concentric circles around a huge dome. Broad walkways filled with Phi ran between clusters of buildings, and wide swaths of greenery surrounded each building and bordered each walkway. I thought to myself, where the hell am I? The answer to my question was immediate. There was no voice in my head, just an understanding. I was on the Phi home world. This was a Phi city. The balcony or should I say we, stood on, had no guardrail. When my host Phi stepped over the side, we slowly drifted down to the first floor level. The Phi themselves, they could not levitate, but the tight-fitting suits they wore held them aloft. It felt like a tight glove lifting me down from the balcony. And once we'd all reached the ground level, I immediately set off toward the giant dome in the center of the city. The walkway was crowded with Phi, each walking in its own unique destination, and there were no greetings, no acknowledgments of each other's presence. You know, beside keeping out of each other's way, each Phi could have been the only inhabitant on the planet. The surface was for walking, but beneath the ground ran tunnels that could take you anywhere on the planet. Anyway, as we walked next to the beds of greenery, I realized that they weren't planted for landscaping purposes. They were crops. The bed I passed was filled with what looked like leafy salad greens, large yellow pods, and something that resembled corn with pink tassels. And swarming just above the greenery were tiny winged bugs that amazingly never strayed from above the plants. I asked what the bugs were for, and it seems when the crops were harvested, so were the bugs. They provided an important source of protein for the Phi. My host Phi obviously knew I was along for the ride because it was constantly swiveling its head, giving me a very complete tour of the city. When we reached the dome, I realized it was much larger than I first thought. But it must have been 50 stories high. We gained entry into it through a large arched-shaped opening, and I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The first 100 yards into the dome was ringed with steps, and the steps were filled with Phi. The effect was of a huge stadium. In the middle of the floor of the dome was this circular pit that took up most of the space inside the dome. And no railing separated the five from the sudden drop-off. I have no idea how deep the pit went. But when we looked over the edge, all I saw was darkness. Within the pit, slightly lower than the surrounding lip, were three huge circular platforms, and each platform was crowded with hundreds of phi, and each phi was in constant motion. And the population of each dish-shaped platform constantly shifted as phi drifted from platform to platform. One platform would become so crowded, phi would practically be forced off its edge, while another platform would become sparsely populated. And movement between the three platforms was constant as phi drifted, not only between the three platforms, but in and out of the pit. Then it was our turn. My phi stepped into the pit and drifted onto one of the platforms. I posed the question, why are we doing this? The response, I understood, was that we were presenting ourselves to the Phi Collective. I knew there was more to it than that, but I was not privy to any deeper understandings, nor would I have understood its significance. The dance from platform to platform continued for another hour or so. Then, because I suppose it was time, my Phi leaped back towards the floor surrounding the pit. And midway through the air, I was drawn back into my body. Phi B immediately stood up and left. I remained seated in a daze. My God, it was the most remarkable thing I've ever experienced.
That's amazing, Dicky.
Yes, it certainly was.
Anything else you want to share?
Nope, that's about it.
Okay.